Welcome to Avoidant Decoded, where we explore the hidden patterns behind human emotions, relationships, and attachment. If you want to understand the psychology behind avoidant behavior, build stronger connections, and discover what truly happens beneath emotional distance, consider joining our membership for deeper insights and exclusive content. Today, we uncover the powerful truth about avoidance, emotional timing, and the path toward creating a healthier and more meaningful connection. The biggest mistake people make with avoidance is believing their distance means they don't care. But what if the real secret was never about chasing harder or loving more? It was about understanding the moments when their heart is actually open. When you learn the hidden rhythm behind an avoidance emotions, the same person who once felt impossible to reach can become deeply connected, loving, and emotionally present. The difference is not control, it is timing. Avoidants follow patterns more than most people realize. Think of it like seasons. Just as a bear is energetic in the summer and retreats into its cave during winter, avoidants move through emotional cycles that are surprisingly consistent. On the surface, they may seem unpredictable or confusing, but once you understand their rhythm, their behavior becomes much easier to read. People who are emotionally aware and grounded can almost anticipate what an avoidant will do next. They know when to step in, when to step back, and how to engage without triggering resistance. That's why some relationships with avoidance actually work long-term without the constant pain that most people expect. A big part of making that work comes down to timing. When someone truly understands when to approach and when to give space, everything changes. What used to feel like a constant push and pull suddenly becomes smooth and natural. The connection starts to feel effortless instead of draining. Conversations don't feel forced anymore. Emotional closeness builds gradually instead of being pushed. Even conflict becomes easier to handle because it happens at the right moment, when the avoidant is mentally and emotionally open instead of defensive. When interactions happen at the right time, the avoidant begins to show up differently. They become more present, more responsive, and more willing to engage. Not because they were forced to change, but because they feel safe enough to participate. Timing allows them to associate the relationship with comfort rather than pressure. Instead of dreading emotional conversations, they begin to welcome them. Instead of avoiding closeness, they start leaning into it. The relationship becomes something they enjoy instead of something they feel the need to escape from. This shift doesn't just reduce conflict, it creates a completely different emotional experience for both people. The connection starts to feel fulfilling instead of exhausting. There's less tension, less guessing, and less frustration. Both partners feel understood rather than opposed. Most importantly, the avoidant's real self begins to show up more often. When they're not busy protecting themselves from pressure or poorly timed emotional demands, their natural ability to care, love, and connect becomes visible. They can be affectionate, thoughtful, and deeply committed when they feel safe in their own rhythm. When timing is right, the relationship develops a natural flow. It no longer feels like one person is chasing while the other is pulling away. Instead, both people meet each other in moments where connection feels right. This creates a series of positive experiences that build on each other instead of triggering defensive reactions. Over time, this builds trust and emotional safety without forcing anything. You can see this clearly in how conversations begin to unfold. When an avoidant is approached during a moment when they're open, discussions about feelings or the future don't feel threatening, they feel normal. The avoidant doesn't shut down or pull away. They engage willingly. They share, they listen, and they participate because they're not being pushed beyond what they can handle in that moment. The same applies to physical closeness. Instead of one person always initiating while the other hesitates or withdraws, intimacy becomes mutual. It happens naturally, without pressure. The avoidant begins to take initiative themselves, showing affection in their own way and at their own pace. This balance creates a more satisfying and genuine connection. As these positive interactions continue, the avoidant starts to feel more confident in the relationship. They begin to trust that their boundaries will be respected and that they won't be overwhelmed. Ironically, this sense of safety makes them more open to deeper connection. Their walls start to lower, not because they were forced down, but because they no longer feel necessary. This creates an upward cycle where trust leads to more openness, and more openness strengthens the relationship. The reason most people struggle with avoidance is because they completely miss this timing element. They act based on their own emotional needs rather than understanding the avoidant's internal rhythm. When they feel disconnected, they try to fix it immediately. When they feel uncertain, they push for reassurance. Unfortunately, this usually happens at the exact moment the avoidant needs space, which only makes things worse. This is where the cycle begins. The avoidant feels pressured and pulls away, while the other person feels rejected and pushes harder. Both people end up frustrated, thinking the relationship isn't working, when in reality, it's a matter of timing being completely off. Another common mistake is choosing the worst possible moments to have important conversations. People often bring up serious relationship topics when they're already feeling distant or anxious. But those are usually the same moments when the avoidant is trying to regulate themselves and create space. Instead of resolving anything, these conversations trigger defensiveness and make the avoidant associate emotional discussions with stress and pressure. On top of that, many people fail to notice the small windows when the avoidant is actually open. These moments can be subtle, a relaxed mood, a casual conversation, a small gesture of closeness. But because their focus is on unmet needs or frustration, they either miss these opportunities or respond too intensely, overwhelming the avoidant and causing them to retreat again. Modern relationship advice doesn't help much either. There's a strong belief that constant communication, daily emotional check-ins, and immediate problem solving are signs of a healthy relationship. While that might work for some, it often feels suffocating to an avoidant. They need space to process, to come back on their own terms, and to engage when they feel ready. Forcing constant connection disrupts their natural rhythm and keeps them in a defensive state. Understanding avoidance isn't about changing them, it's about learning how they naturally operate. When you stop trying to control the timing and instead align with it, everything becomes easier. The resistance fades, the connection deepens, and the relationship starts to feel balanced instead of one-sided. What once felt complicated begins to make sense, and what once felt like distance begins to feel like a different kind of closeness, one that works when it's respected rather than rushed. Avoidants usually move through emotional stages that follow a recognizable pattern. Their behavior is not random, even when it feels confusing to their partner. They often move through cycles of connection, emotional overwhelm, pulling away, and eventually returning. These phases are a natural part of how they regulate closeness and independence. Trying to fight these cycles or force them to change often creates more tension. Understanding and respecting these patterns creates a much healthier dynamic. The connection phase is the period when an avoidant feels secure, comfortable, and emotionally safe. During this time, their protective walls naturally become lower. They may become more expressive, more affectionate, and more interested in spending quality time together. They might initiate conversations, make future plans, or become more open about their thoughts and feelings. This phase often appears after they have had enough personal space to recharge and reconnect with their own sense of independence. Recognizing these moments is extremely important because this is when genuine emotional connection can happen without pressure. Instead of trying to force closeness during difficult moments, understanding when they are naturally open allows intimacy to develop more easily. However, after experiencing deeper closeness, many avoidants enter a stage where they begin to feel overwhelmed. This does not always happen because their partner has done something wrong. Often it comes from their own internal fears around losing freedom, becoming too dependent, or feeling emotionally exposed. As intimacy increases, their mind may begin searching for ways to create distance and regain control. During this phase, they might become more critical, less responsive, emotionally distant, or appear less interested. These behaviors are often signs that they are struggling with the intensity of closeness rather than a clear indication that they no longer care. They are attempting to create emotional balance in the way they know best. The withdrawal phase follows when the avoidant starts creating more space between themselves and their partner. They may focus heavily on personal activities, communicate less frequently, or seem emotionally unavailable. To someone who does not understand avoidant patterns, this can feel like rejection or abandonment. But for many avoidants, this distance is a way to calm their nervous system, process emotions, and rebuild their sense of individuality. When this phase is understood instead of feared, the relationship becomes much easier to navigate. Instead of reacting with panic, repeated messages, or pressure for reassurance, allowing the process to unfold naturally gives the avoidant the opportunity to regulate themselves. Eventually, the reapproach phase begins. Once the avoidant feels emotionally balanced again and no longer feels overwhelmed by closeness, they often start moving back toward the relationship. They may become more communicative, more affectionate, and more interested in reconnecting. This stage can create some of the best opportunities for deeper emotional conversations because their desire to reconnect comes naturally rather than from pressure. Timing becomes especially important when discussing emotions, relationship concerns, or future plans. The same conversation can lead to completely different outcomes depending on when it happens. Bringing up serious topics when an avoidant is already withdrawing often creates resistance and makes them shut down further. But having those same conversations when they are emotionally available can lead to understanding, honesty, and stronger connection. The ideal moments for emotional discussions are usually near the end of the connection phase or during the beginning of the reapproach phase. At these points, the avoidant feels safe enough to open up, but has not yet reached the point where closeness feels overwhelming. They are more likely to listen, share their perspective, and understand their partner's emotions. The key is paying attention to their emotional state. Are they relaxed? Are they present? Are they naturally engaging? Those signs often indicate that they are more prepared for meaningful conversations. The environment also plays a major role. Emotional discussions are much more successful when they happen in calm, private settings, rather than during stressful moments or in situations where the avoidant feels trapped. Starting with appreciation, understanding, and connection before discussing concerns helps create emotional safety. Giving them time to think and respond is equally important. Avoidants often need a moment to process their emotions before they can express themselves clearly. Filling every silence or demanding an immediate answer can make them feel pressured and cause them to retreat. Knowing when to pause a conversation is also a sign of emotional maturity. If the avoidant begins becoming defensive, overwhelmed, or emotionally closed off, forcing the discussion usually makes things worse. Recognizing their limit, allowing time to process, and returning to the conversation later often creates a much better outcome. This shows that their emotions and boundaries are respected, which builds trust over time. Response timing also has a powerful effect on the relationship. The way someone responds to an avoidant's messages, emotional openness, or attempts at connection can influence whether the avoidant feels safe continuing to engage. An immediate and intense reaction may seem loving, but for an avoidant, it can sometimes feel like pressure. When they share something personal and receive a very strong emotional response, they may feel exposed or overwhelmed and regret opening up. A calmer response that acknowledges their vulnerability without demanding more in return often feels much safer. When an avoidant shares something meaningful, the goal is not to immediately turn that moment into a deeper emotional discussion. Sometimes the best response is simply appreciation and acceptance. Showing that their openness is valued without attaching expectations encourages them to share more in the future. Physical affection also requires awareness of timing. Attempting closeness when an avoidant is in a withdrawal phase may feel overwhelming and cause them to create even more distance. But offering affection when they are relaxed and emotionally receptive can strengthen the bond and create positive experiences associated with intimacy. Communication works best when it follows their natural rhythm rather than forcing a certain standard. If someone usually takes a few hours to respond to messages, expecting instant replies can create unnecessary pressure. Matching a comfortable communication pace allows the relationship to feel balanced instead of like one person is constantly pursuing the other. Every avoidant has their own patterns. Some may open up more during certain times of the day, after spending time alone, or after completing personal responsibilities. Understanding these natural windows increases the chances of positive interactions. Avoidants often give small signals when they are emotionally available, but these signals can easily be missed. They might share personal stories, ask deeper questions, suggest spending time together, or simply become more present and engaged. These moments are valuable because they show a willingness to connect. One of the most overlooked opportunities often comes after conflict. After an argument or difficult conversation, many avoidants need time alone to process what happened. But after that processing period, they may return with a greater willingness to reconnect and repair the relationship. The moment when they come back is often a powerful opportunity. Instead of reopening old arguments immediately or demanding explanations, responding with calmness and understanding creates a safer environment. This allows the avoidant to associate reconnection with peace rather than conflict. Understanding timing with an avoidant is not about playing games or manipulating their behavior. It is about recognizing emotional patterns, respecting individual needs, and creating an environment where both people feel secure. When closeness is approached with patience and awareness, the relationship can move away from cycles of anxiety and distance and toward trust, stability, and genuine connection. After a conflict, avoidants often need time to process what happened before they can reconnect emotionally. But once they have had that space and begin moving back toward connection, it creates a valuable opportunity for healing conversations. This is the moment when appreciation, understanding, and gentle discussions about improving the relationship can have the greatest impact. Instead of focusing on blame or reopening old wounds, these moments can be used to rebuild trust and create a stronger emotional foundation. Another important opportunity appears when an avoidant experiences a personal or professional achievement. When they accomplish something meaningful, they are often more emotionally open and more willing to share their excitement with the people closest to them. These moments create a natural opening for connection. Recognizing their effort, celebrating their success, and showing genuine appreciation can strengthen the bond between both partners. Positive experiences like these become emotional memories that remind the avoidant that the relationship is a place of encouragement and support. There are also moments when avoidants face external stress from work, family situations, or personal challenges. At first, these periods may seem like the worst time to create emotional closeness because they already appear overwhelmed. However, when approached with understanding, these situations can actually become opportunities for deeper connection. The key is offering support without creating expectations. When someone helps an avoidant without demanding immediate emotional repayment, the avoidant often feels safer showing their vulnerable side. They begin to experience their partner as someone who provides comfort rather than additional pressure. This creates a stronger emotional association with trust and security. Timing also plays a major role when making requests in the relationship. Asking an avoidant for something during a period when they are withdrawn often feels like another demand placed on them. Instead of hearing the request as an opportunity to contribute, they may experience it as pressure and naturally become defensive. However, when requests are made during moments of emotional openness, they are much more likely to be received positively. The avoidant can see them as a way to strengthen the relationship rather than another responsibility they have to carry. The way a request is presented matters just as much as the timing. Beginning with appreciation and connection creates a safer emotional environment before discussing needs. Instead of focusing on what the avoidant is doing wrong or what is missing, explaining how a change could improve the relationship reduces defensiveness. Giving them time to think before responding is also important. Many avoidants need space to process information internally before they can give a genuine answer. Expecting an immediate response can make them feel trapped, while allowing them time shows respect for their independence and decision-making process. The same principle applies to setting boundaries. Boundaries introduced during moments of anger or conflict can feel like punishment or control. The avoidant may focus more on the emotional intensity of the moment, rather than understanding the actual purpose behind the boundary. But when boundaries are discussed during calm and connected moments, they are more likely to be understood as a healthy part of maintaining the relationship. They feel less like criticism and more like an agreement that protects both people. Even consequences related to cross boundaries require thoughtful timing. Reacting immediately in the middle of an emotional argument can escalate the situation and cause further withdrawal. Communicating consequences later, when both people are calmer, allows the message to be understood as a natural result of certain choices, rather than an act of revenge or retaliation. To master timing with an avoidant, it is important to learn how to recognize their signs of emotional availability. Avoidants do not always directly say when they feel open or closed. Often, their emotional state appears through their behavior, body language, communication style, and overall energy. When an avoidant feels available for connection, their body language usually becomes more relaxed. They may make more eye contact, appear more comfortable, and show greater presence during conversations. They are not constantly looking for an escape or trying to create distance. On the other hand, when they are emotionally withdrawn, they may appear distracted, tense, less engaged, or physically distant. Even if they are still interacting, their energy may suggest that they are focused on protecting their personal space. Communication patterns also reveal a lot. When an avoidant is emotionally open, they may start conversations more often, ask questions, share personal thoughts, or become more curious about their partner's experiences. These are signs that their walls are lower and they are more willing to connect. During withdrawal periods, communication often becomes more limited. Conversations may stay on the surface, emotional topics may feel uncomfortable, and responses may become shorter or less enthusiastic. Recognizing this difference helps prevent unnecessary pressure during moments when they are not emotionally ready. Energy levels are another important signal. A connected avoidant often appears more engaged, interested, and willing to participate in shared experiences. A withdrawn avoidant may seem tired, distracted, or more focused on individual activities, even if they are physically present. When someone consistently understands these signals and responds with good timing, something powerful begins to happen in the relationship. Trust starts developing. The avoidant begins to associate their partner with patience, understanding, and emotional safety instead of pressure and overwhelm. Over time, they become more comfortable expressing their needs and feelings because they trust that their vulnerability will not be used as an opportunity to chase, control, or demand more from them. This improved communication makes future interactions easier because both partners understand each other better. Good timing allows the avoidant's natural ability to love and commit to appear without the protective barriers that are created by pressure. When they feel accepted and respected, they often become more affectionate, more willing to plan a future together, and more invested in making the relationship successful. A healthy relationship with an avoidant is not built by constantly fighting their natural tendencies. It is built by understanding both people's emotional rhythms and finding a balance that respects everyone's needs. When both partners learn how to move with each other instead of against each other, the relationship becomes stronger, conflicts become easier to handle, emotional closeness feels safer, intimacy develops naturally instead of feeling forced. Both people begin experiencing the relationship as something that adds peace and fulfillment to their lives rather than something that creates constant stress. Mastering timing with an avoidant does not mean being perfect or always saying the right thing at the right moment. It means developing awareness, patience, and emotional intelligence. It means choosing long-term connection over temporary reactions. When this balance is achieved, the relationship can transform into something deeply rewarding. It shows that avoidants are capable of creating loving, committed, and meaningful partnerships when their emotional needs are understood and their desire for safety and independence is respected. The truth is, an avoidant does not always need more love. They need to feel safe enough to receive it. When you understand their emotional rhythm, respect their space, and choose the right moments to connect, the walls that once felt impossible to break can slowly come down. A healthy relationship is not built through pressure or pursuit, but through patience, awareness, and mutual understanding. When timing meets emotional safety, even the most distant heart can learn to trust, open, and create a deeply meaningful connection.